Hello, everyone out there in Laravel land, denizens of the Laravel community. Denizens. I actually looked this up, and I think it means like people of a certain place or a certain group or something like that. Denizens. Denizens versus citizens. I'm not sure. Denizens of the Laravel community. Welcome to the show, my friends. This is episode 217. Today is June 19th, Juneteenth, 2024. Today's episode is sponsored by Mailtrap. We'll tell you a little bit more about them later in the show. With me, as always, my friend and wonderful co-host, Mr. Michael Dorinda. How's it going, dude?
Hello, going well. Laracon AU speaker announcement started this week, so
Yes.
I'm unloading my secrets, which is good because it's not nice. It's a pain keeping the secrets, trying to keep the secrets from getting out, and as like all of the speakers know who all of the speakers are, so trying to keep that growing circle of knowledge from leaking is always an interesting thing. I'm like,
yep.
Don't all go and like all of the Laracon AU tweets at once, please, because it's very suspicious. So
I'm trying to decide if I'm a good or bad secret keeper. I think I'm typically a good secret keeper because I forget things really quickly.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
And so you could tell me something, and then a week from now, I'd be like, "Hey, remember that conversation we had?" I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know. Yes, maybe, kind of. I do."
Yeah.
So,
see, I'm kind of like that. I won't forget the things that I've been told in secret, but I will forget whether or not they were told to me as a secret or if I read them somewhere.
Sure.
So it's like because there's all this stuff rattling around in my head, and I never remember. Did someone tell me that in confidence, or did I read that somewhere, or did someone tell me in public in a public setting? And so I find that there's just a lot of stuff that either I keep to myself because I don't know if it's public until I'm sure, until I see it somewhere else that we can talk about it, or I have to go and ask the person and be like, "Hey, this thing is a secret, right?"
Right. You're never on purpose the first person to break the news, right? You're like,
No.
I'm intentionally waiting for someone else to say it. And then I will be the guy. I'll be second or third in line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good times. Well, I'm glad to hear that all of that is going well, and that the conference is coming together. I know there's been a couple little hiccups along the way, just little things that you have with conference stuff, all the little behind the scenes things that you got to deal with. So glad to see that all the hard work is coming to fruition and getting things rolling there. So that's awesome. Well, hey folks, as always, we have a few releases, some news, some packages, and some tutorials. So let's jump into it with releases. So Laravel 11.11, this was updated on June 18th, so just yesterday. Release day, the Laravel team released 11.11 with support for third-party relations in the model show command, new collection methods, cache events, and more. So let's first talk about Ryuta Hamasaki, who contributed before and after methods to collection and lazy collection instances. So what this does is if you have a collection of items and you say before, so collection, arrow, before, and then pass in a value, what it will do is it will give you the value that's before that one. So for example, if you're collecting an array of integers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you say collection before 2, it will return to you the number 1. If you have a set of if you have a associative array, right, and you pass a value in there, so if you had some items in the collection that are keyed, it will look at the value and give you the value that was previous to that one. So you also have something that is so you can pass in like a actual static value, or you can pass in a closure. So it will wait until the first item matches, and then it will give you the previous item, right? So before, and then you pass in your closure, and as soon as it's truthy, it will give you the value that happened just before that one. Similarly, with the after method, it does obviously the exact opposite. It will give you the next item in the collection after your static value that you're looking for, or after a truthy statement is returned from that closure. So that's pretty cool. I could see needing that. I've had to do some really weird stuff where you have to get a value before a value. Some really funky things to make that happen, where you kind of have to keep 2 always in like a running, or like an array that you're returning, like kind of doing a carry through. So this is a really handy way to do this. Nicely done. Thank you so much, Ryuta. Next, Alex Bauma contributed a new cache event to the framework that applications can listen to. And I should correct that. It's actually cache events. So the events that are now available are forgetting key, key forget failed, key write failed, retrieving key, retrieving many keys, writing key, writing many keys. So these events are now able to be listened to from within your application. So when these things are happening on that cache driver, those will get fired. You can catch those and then respond appropriately. We also have support for third-party relations in the model show artisan command. So Jonas Staudemeyer contributed the ability to include third-party package model relations in the model show command. So this command finds a model's relations by analyzing the code of its methods and looking for any this has many. This doesn't detect third-party relations like Eloquent has many deep. So we could build a whole system for packages to hook into that, but that would be overkill. So instead, we check the method's return type, see if it's a subclass of the base relation class, and that's how this works. So you can learn more about that in pull request 51807. Tim McDonald, T-Mac, as they call him in Aussie land. Not true.
Do they?
No, they don't. No, they don't actually call him T-Mac. It's like we were at the last LairCon in Nashville. It was J-Mac, and there was Tim McDonald. I think we were all sitting at like the end of the table or something like that, and I was just teasing him, calling him T-Mac. So T-Mac it is, contributed the session ID method to the session facade. So you can just call session dotop ID, and you can still call session get ID, but ID is just a little syntactic sugar there for you. Makes it a little bit less verbose. Amir Khalif Sultani contributed to adding locale and time zone values to Laravel's about command. So if you remember, this was, I don't know, it feels like it was maybe about a year ago that this was put out there, PHP artisan about, and this will give you a bunch of information about your environment, your cache, your drivers that you're using for broadcasting, cache, database logs, mail, queue, session, etc. And so this now will also return the time zone that is currently set and the locale that is currently set. So typically the time zone is set to UTC by default, and the locale is set by default to English, EN. And so you can now get those from the about command. Dwight Watson contributed updates to the status code method for determining a 422. So if you remember, a 422 is a unprocessable content. So you can check those out at statuscodes.io, by the way. I always, if I need to remember any of these things, statuscodes.io is always the place I go. So it's a good spot to look. But unprocessable content instead of unprocessable entity. The way you interact with asserting a 422 status code hasn't changed. You can still in your tests say response, assert, unprocessable. But now you have, I think, let's see here. Yeah, I guess that's all he did, maybe.
Yeah,
is that all he did? He added a...
It's changed now, so it's referred to as unprocessable content instead of unprocessable
entity. I see. Okay, sure. Why not? So it looks like there's an RFC that's referenced here regarding HTTP semantics. So the technical way that you should call it, maybe. And so, 51815 for more details on that one. And you can see the RFC 9110 in the show notes here as well on the HTTP semantics and why exactly that changed. Dennis Coach contributed a relation get morph alias method. So since there's a relation get morphed model, meaning you can say, what's the model that this is morphing to? I think it'd be beneficial. This is a quote here. I think it would be beneficial to add the reverse, get morph alias. So this addition is particularly beneficial for testing as it simplifies assertions with this assert database has. So developers no longer need to recall the morph alias used. So you can say, if I'm looking for a taskable type, I can say relation get morph alias and pass in the document class, and it will give me the alias that it would use in the database there for that. So you don't have to try and remember that string that's getting used there. So that's really nice. Okay, release notes are able to be found on GitHub between 11.10 and 11.11. The following release notes in the show notes that will link up are the change log here. So thank you so much, Mr. Redmond, Paul Redmond, everyone's favorite human, for writing that one up. Appreciate it.
Very cool. If that we talked about a few things there, but if you look at the blog article on the Laravel News website, there's like 30 different commits that went into this release. This is a minor release 13 years into Laravel. It's still getting these features added all the time. So definitely cool to see that the Laravel train keeps rolling. Speaking of the Laravel train continuing to roll, Sentry and Laravel have announced a new partnership that makes Sentry the preferred monitoring and debugging solution for Laravel projects using Forge or Vapor. From the announcement post, Sentry is committed to the Laravel and PHP community, and we continue to build with you in mind. With a new Forge and Vapor integration, we're forging, pun intended, a new standard for managing, deploying, and debugging your Laravel apps. We have a video that we'll include in the show notes that talks through how the new integration works. But essentially, you log into Laravel Forge or Vapor, you go to your user profile, and in the user profile in Forge or team settings in Vapor, when you are logged in as a team owner, you can now find a new Sentry integration option. If you follow the prompts, you can then link your Sentry account and configure Sentry and connect your site to create a Sentry project from the site or the project's Sentry panel, and then you can deploy your application and Sentry will start tracking errors for you immediately. If you haven't tried Sentry yet, check out our guide on the Laravel News website on how Sentry can improve your Laravel applications. It's also super easy to install and comes with new features like a new widget to direct feedback from users when they encounter a bug on your site. Sentry will attach their comment with all the debugging context you could dream of and replay events, screenshots, error details, URL tags, and more. Sentry have been in our community for years and years and years.
Long time, long time.
Their product is incredibly robust. It's not just bug tracking. It does performance monitoring. It does all kinds of other analytics and things like that. And it's exciting to see, this is probably just the start of that. There's other things I think that can be added into this integration in Forge as well. And it'll be exciting to see what the Laravel team have got cooking up that they haven't announced yet. So keep an eye out on that. But we'll have links to all of this for you in the show notes.
Absolutely. We've been using Sentry for a long time. And so I'm glad to hear about this. And they've got some really cool stuff as well as with cron monitoring, right? They've got some interesting offerings there. I've not yet done the Forge integration. So I haven't integrated it through Forge. I'm wondering if you still have to do everything manually like you would, like inside of your application, if you have to set it all up just like you would.
Yeah, I think this is basically just setting up the project for you.
Okay.
So I think it's kind of a disjointed process because you still have to, install the Sentry package into your project and set up the service provider and all the exception handling stuff, which I don't like. That's not a concern of your deployment process. But getting the project set up and all of that kind of stuff is a first step, I think, of more things that can be coming in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right. I think that's exactly what it is. They want us to get our Sentry account hooked up, and then they can probably do things like monitor. If you have a scheduler running, it can kind of automatically hook into all that stuff. Maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. Some cool opportunities there for improvements. So yeah, it's exciting. Okay. Laravel Herd 1.7 is out with updates to the dump UI. If you have not been using Laravel Herd, by the way, you are missing out. It is awesome, and the free version is actually really good. It's a very generous free tier, and I used the free tier for quite a while. We are currently paying for Pro because I think it's worth it. There's some really good stuff in there that I think is awesome, and love supporting the team that's putting that together. But this is not about that. This is about the update. So let's talk about the update. So Laravel Herd includes a few new features to the dump user interface. The Mac OS version is now out, and the Windows version is following shortly. So some of the things that you can do here is you can change the sort order of the items that are coming out in that dump UI. You can change the sort order of those dump cards. Also, you can open your configured IDE directly from a dump. So if you look at it, and it will show you exactly where that like DD came from. You can click on that. It'll open up in Vim. It'll open up in Sublime. It'll open up in VS Code. It'll open up in PHP Storm, whichever one you have configured as your default IDE. That's what it will open up. You can also change the font size, which sounds silly a little bit until you are pairing with somebody and you're trying to share this and you can't change the font size. And that's really frustrating. And so this is a really nice addition, just one of those paper cut things. And of course, it uses the same shortcuts as everything else does, Command plus or Command minus to increase or decrease the size of the logger there. The log viewer is also now framework agnostic, so it also supports WordPress log files, which is really cool. You can, of course, view the complete change log on the Herd website as well. You can find it at herd.laravel.com/changelog. And then that has everything listed there, and you can look at all of them specifically on that page as well. And it actually has it separated out between Mac OS and Windows. So like the blog post mentioned, the Windows one is just slightly behind. And so if you're looking for those, you can find all that information there as well.
Coming in PHP 8.4, creating a DateTime from a Unix timestamp will become more convenient with the new create from timestamp method. So we've had this kind of thing in Carbon for a long time if you've used that, and creating PHP DateTime objects from a timestamp is a bit finicky in that you've got to use the underlying create from format functionality. So this will support both a typical Unix timestamp as well as timestamps that contain microseconds. So with PHP 8.3 and below, you need to use create from format. So you'd say DateTime or DateTime immutable, : create from format. Then you'd have to pass it two parameters. The first being U, capital U as a string, and then pass it your string timestamp to get a DateTime instance, and or U.U, capital U dot lowercase u. This is going to make more sense if you watch this on our YouTube channel. But as I said, for those that have been using Carbon, particularly in Laravel, we already have this create from timestamp functionality available in the framework via Carbon. And so this is essentially bringing that functionality up into PHP's standard programming language. So it's encouraging that PHP is getting this new method at the language level as well. It just simplifies that process a little bit for you. So you can check that all out when that lands in PHP 8.4 later this year.
Very good. Speaking of sponsors, this episode is sponsored by Mailtrap, an email delivery platform that developers love. An email sending solution with industry best analytics, SMTP, an email API, SDKs for major programming languages, and 24/7 human support. You can try it for free at mailtrap.io. Thank you so much, Mailtrap, for sponsoring the show. Let's talk about events, shall we? Events, feature flags, and more with PostHog. So feature flags, we've talked about them a bit on this show before. We have got Pennant now, which is like first-party support for feature flags. But this is not that. Laravel PostHog is a package that integrates with PostHog, which is a platform to analyze, test, observe, and deploy new features with Laravel. So it builds on top of a PostHog PHP package that already exists. But this offers a facade and a simplified configuration in your Laravel application. So PostHog has a variety of features that you can use. This PHP Laravel package specifically provides the following features that you can integrate: event capture, user identification, feature flags, group analytics, and sending page views. PostHog does not have a Laravel Pennant feature flag driver yet, but you can use PostHog's feature flags directly via the package. And you can learn more about it, get full installation instructions, and view the source code on GitHub. The documentation has more examples of using this package with Laravel and PHP as well. posthog.com/docs/libraries/Laravel is where you can find that documentation, or of course find it in the show notes as well.
I've heard about PostHog recently in a few different places. I can't remember exactly.
I really like their logo. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I like the idea of being able to put feature flags in the hands of other people in the business, so it's not kind of guarded by developers necessarily, especially if it's like a paid feature that people need to opt into, or it's a beta feature that like your product or sales people have control of letting people, they go and sell the thing to someone, then they go and tick a thing to enable it. So I think having some service, there's a few different ones out there. We use one at work where we've got feature flags in our platform, and we just check, this thing's enabled, so we go on and turn that thing on. And it means that once we hook everything up, these things can be just turned on and off, by anyone in the business that has access to do that. So I like kind of tying the two concepts together. And it'll be interesting to see when they end up with a Pennant driver, because streamlining that process from a development point of view is obviously a good thing as well. So keen to see how that one plays out.
Yep. Yeah, it looks very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff going on with that one.
The chaotic schedule package for Laravel allows you to randomize scheduled command execution time and date intervals via pseudo-random number generators. If you have ever wanted to run your scheduled commands on random times of the day or on certain times of the day, or you may need to send some notifications not on fixed dates and times, but rather on random intervals to make it feel more human, then this is the package for you. This Laravel package enables you to run commands on random intervals and periods while respecting the boundaries set exclusively by you as the developer. One use case mentioned in the README is sending user notifications or emails, but sending them randomly at to add a bit more of a personal human touch. I know when I schedule tweets, I try and put them at like random minutes of the hour rather than making it, the hour or quarter past, or, I'll go for 17 or 23 or something crazy like that. So avoiding the sending of these messages at regular intervals at the same time would be, they're more recognizably automated if they're always at the same time. So you can say schedule command daily at random and then pass it two values, 8:15, 11:42, and then it will run the command daily on a random time between those two intervals. My curiosity would be, how does it stop it from doing it multiple times? Within because the way that Laravel scheduler works is it kind of goes, is there anything to run here? So it's not necessarily contextually aware. I assume it caches that it has already sent a given
That's what I would think too.
job.
Yeah.
It would have to, otherwise you end up sending things randomly.
Yeah.
Using
right.
the
A
lottery
cache or a
system to
database
determine
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the package itself includes quite a few methods to define your random specifications based on several factors, such as daily at random or hourly at random, hourly multiple at random, random days, and more. You can learn more about this package and get full installation instructions and view the source code on GitHub. Chaotic schedule sounds like it might be a bit out there, but I think, especially for that use case of making it seem more human, depending on the content of those emails, of course, could certainly be useful in many different contexts, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And it looks like it's all, I mean, so you can imagine how difficult it would be to like test chaos, right?
Yeah.
But he's actually got a specific section in here, asserting the chaos. So going through and asserting this is how it should work correctly. The other thing I could think of is, we had this similar problem when we were sort of writing our own SaaS a couple years ago. And that was that everything comes in on the hour and on the 15 minutes and on the half hour and on the 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just how it is. And so what you'll end up doing is, if you watch the performance metrics of your servers, 8 a.m. you have this massive spike, and at noon you have this massive spike, right? And it's you're just pegging your CPU because that you're running all your jobs exactly at that minute. And so something like this could actually be interesting if you're like, listen, it doesn't have to run exactly at 8. It can run anytime between 8 and 9. Just do a random time between those two. That sort of could help to distribute the load a little bit, so that your CPU doesn't do this big, massive spike. So I was thinking that could be interesting too.
We used to have these. I used to have these conversations nearly 20 years ago now when I was working for an internet provider, and we were talking about only doing billing on the first of the month, and the conversation always came around to, well, what's the computer doing for the other 29 or 30 days of the month? It's not billing. So this is how we ended up with and then you kind of there comes a point where everything from like the 28th to the 31st always falls back. So the 28th is always the busiest month because every month has 28 days at some point. So anyone that's 29 or 28, 29 or 30 or 31 will eventually slip backwards, and then everyone's billing day would land there. So those were always the busy times. But having stuff distributed is a better way to make it. I mean, in a serverless world, it probably doesn't matter as much because you're not paying for that compute if you're not using it.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yep, good point. Okay, folks, moving on. We have got a share error package for Laravel's new exception page. So when Laravel moved to the new minimal default exception page in Laravel 11.9, Spassy released a Laravel share error package, and this brings back that ability that we had in the previous error page to share your Laravel exceptions with others. Now, the really nice thing about this is you can share these even if you're just running this on your local. So if you're running locally and you get an error locally, when you create this share, it creates a generated public URL. The share menu supports light and dark mode and creates a share just like the original Laravel Ignition exception page that shipped with Laravel. Once you create that public share, your colleagues then have access to the stack trace, context info such as request routing details and view variables. This is actually really helpful if you have like a junior and they want to just like share some context with you. Hey, this is the error I'm getting, and maybe you're not available to pair immediately, but they want to be able to send you this. You can see exactly what they're seeing on their screen. So you can learn more about this package, get full installation instructions, and view the source code on GitHub. You can also install this package as a development dependency only in Laravel 11 apps using Composer, using that --dev flag, which would be a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this was probably one of the bigger complaints when Laravel simplified the exception page to strip out all of the extra stuff. So it's nice that there was an easy way to be able to add that back in. So shout out to the team at Sparsy. Last of the packages today, this is a Neovim plugin for navigating Laravel and Livewire components. So Lali Components is a Neovim package for auto-completion of Laravel and Livewire components by community member Ricardo Ramirez. It offers component navigation using the GF key motion, prompting you to choose the component when more than one exists, as well as an auto-completion functionality using Nvim CMP. So you can navigate to components with the GF key binding, and using the GF command on certain component names in your code will open the corresponding component. This feature works with the x-blade syntax, @extends, @include, livewire : and @livewire syntax. And when using the Neovim completion plugin, Nvim CMP, suggestions for relevant components will appear as you type the following prefixes. So if you put angle bracket x dash, it will give you an auto completion. @extends, @include, angle bracket live, and @livewire. So you can learn more about this plugin, get full installation instructions, and view the source code on GitHub. We'll have links to all of that in the show notes. I did install this. I used it very briefly because all of our stuff at work at the moment is Laravel backend, React frontend. So I didn't really get a chance to use this in great detail, but it did seem to do what it says on the tin when I was playing around with it. So shout out to Ricardo for that one. It is definitely staying in my Nvim configuration.
Love it. Hey, folks, we are down to the last item here on the list, which is a tutorial by our favorite human, Mr. Paul Redman. And this is about asserting JSON response structure in Laravel. So when you're writing a piece of code in Laravel that's going to be returning a JSON response, it can be really useful to validate the structure of that response. So there's a couple different ways that you can do this. We're going to probably talk about 5 methods here real quick. Laravel has a fluent assert JSON method, which is good to verify JSON values in a given test response. So what you can do is you can get some endpoint, assert JSON, and then inside that you get a closure that has an assertable JSON, and then you can fluently define JSON has teams 3, so it should have 3 of them. JSON has teams.0, and then pass another closure. Hey, it should have these names. And so that does a really good job of making sure that hey, I have 3 teams. I should have at least this name one time, or in this particular location, I should have this. So that test validates that there's 3 teams. The name property exists on the first record and asserts what it is, which is great. However, to complement these assertions, you can also validate the general structure of the entire response using this assert JSON structure. And so you can say, I should have teams, and everything underneath that should have a key of name and a key of sport. And this works really well. But if you needed to add a new key in the future, this test continues to pass because it's like, yeah, it includes name and sport, that's fine. But if you were to add a new one like star player, this test doesn't fail. It just says it contains these 2. That's not a problem. So you can reach for this other method called assert exact JSON, and that does exactly what you would think. It ensures specific properties. Only those specific properties exist in the response. So assert JSON structure can give you confidence that entire structure contains all those properties you expect. Assert exact JSON does just a little bit more than that. However, if you need more extensive assertions around that structure of the JSON, you can also ask about types. What is the type that is being returned in this JSON? So you can use where type, and you can decide what that should be. And then you can also do where all type. And this requires us to define the type for every key in the item, unless you use this etc., which basically says, and the rest of it's just, defined somewhere else or not defined at all. So there you go. That's kind of the whole kit and caboodle there. Assert JSON to assert actual values. The assert JSON structure will do a little bit more just to assert the structure without giving you specific values. Exact JSON will make sure that only those keys exist, and then where type will allow you to specify the types that should be returned as well. So all those together really should give you a lot of confidence that your that your responses are coming back in the shape and in the type and with the values that you would expect them to be. So thank you so much, Paul Redden, for writing that one up. And you can see the Laravel documentation for more examples and useful JSON assertions. Well, folks, that is the show for today. Michael, anything else before we wrap it up?
Did you know about this assert JSON functionality before today?
I have been there. Here's what I will say. Every time we have an episode, I feel like in an update, there will be something about asserting JSON stuff. And at some point, it just got so messed up and soupy in my head, I stopped just paying it. I didn't know what exactly they were. I knew there was a bunch of them. I didn't know what all they were. So no, this is very helpful blog post because it kind of puts into focus all the different methods we have available and how they're useful.
I only just learned about this assert JSON method. Like, I've used assert JSON structure before and things like that, but I only learned about this assert JSON method earlier this week, and the ability to pass it a closure that then gets you this assertable JSON functionality. Because it's extremely useful in some of our contexts at work to be able to just make sure that things are there rather than having to try and do all this weird expectation stuff around nested keys and structures and things like that we can just, I'm like, I don't know who did this. I know that it's been there since at least Laravel 10 at some point. We probably talked about it on this show and I've just forgotten about it because there's so much stuff that goes in one ear and out the other sometimes, because we talk about so much. Some stuff sticks and it's like, oh, I knew about that. And someone will mention something and be like, wait, I just talked about that not long ago. So you can share that with them. But yeah, this is assert JSON. Go and check it out if you're doing anything with APIs. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. And I have the same sentiment. Like, we go over this stuff and not everything is applicable immediately, but many times it'll be a month later, a month and a half later, and somebody will bring something up, be like, oh, I know there's an article in Laravel News. We talked about that. There's something, and so I can just Google it real quick and yep, there it is, Laravel News, and we talked about it. And so there's a lot of content. I understand that, like, even listening to a podcast without code examples in front of your face, sometimes it seems like, like, how helpful is this? It actually is. It really is. If just for the sake of knowing what's out there and what's happening, even if it's not immediately useful to you, it's good just to know. So that when you hear something, it's like, oh, wait, we heard about this assert JSON stuff. Where is that? So, agreed.
Fantastic.
All right, folks. Well, that is it. You can find show notes for this episode at podcast.laravel-news.com/217. Rate us up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars would be incredible and amazing. Hit us up on Twitter or on X at Jacob Bennett, at Michael Dorinda, and at Laravel News. And of course, if you have questions, please reach out to us there. Thanks again to MailTrap for sponsoring the show. Folks, we will see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.